What's up, people? Back at it again. Today we got a real serious video. This video is about love or shared trauma. I connected with somebody recently and we had a lot of conversation. We're going to get into this video about what's love versus what is shared trauma. Stay tuned, subscribe. You already know the drill. Cinematics Music, Cinematics Media, and we'll be right back. So recently I reconnected with a soulmate who I thought was a soulmate, and she said something to me that struck a chord. What she said was that a lot of people mistake love for shared trauma. It was something that I hadn't heard before, but it made a lot of sense. What is love? Love, as defined by Merriam-Webster, is affection based on a sexual desire, a benevolent feeling, or arising out of kinship. Now, what is trauma? Trauma is a disordered psychic or behavioral state resulting from severe mental or emotional stress or physical injury. It could possibly be an emotional upset. Now, what is shared trauma? Shared trauma is the process of having went through similar traumatic experiences and connecting based on the similarities of those traumas. Here are some things that we need to know about trauma and love. Until we truly love ourselves, it is tremendously difficult to love others. It's nearly impossible to love others unless we fully embrace and love ourselves. Sometimes in life, we meet broken people, or we meet people who have gone through the same traumatic experiences in order to help heal ourselves. So life is essentially a mirror of what's inside. So a lot of times we need to deal with these people to heal. Sometimes we actually believe we're in love with someone, and really what we're doing is identifying the shared trauma that we've gone through and that was similar with another person. So if I've been through abusive relationships and I attract a woman who's not healed, and I myself haven't healed, and I attract a woman who's gone through the same abusive relationships, and we're connected, we're like, man, I don't know what it is about you. It's not necessarily love. It's very possible and probable that it is shared trauma. Psychologists say that shared trauma is like a social glue, and it bonds people together. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's easier to bond with someone who you understand, who's like you, who's like-minded, who's gone through the same things that you've gone through in your life. Most of us prefer the path of least resistance. I just recently did a video on understanding what the path of least resistance is. It's going to be somewhere around here, over here, maybe there. It's going to be somewhere around here. Click the video, check out the path of least resistance. But back to the trauma. Most of us do prefer taking the path of least resistance. The only real issue with shared trauma is that neither of you, if neither of you have learned how to heal properly or to cope with the traumas that you guys have went through, you probably are going to recreate the experience and recreate the need and existence of that trauma in your life, because it's going to continue to replay over and over until you learn how to master the trauma. Lastly, I just want to go through 5 myths that people generally have about trauma and love. The first myth about trauma is that it's a life sentence, when it really is not. Even though no one fully heals or overcomes the trauma, it is not a life sentence for people. The second thing is that you only experience it after a life-altering event, which is not true. Trauma can happen during any time of your life, as a child, in the middle of your life, in the end of your life. The third myth is that post-traumatic stress is a disorder. It is not a disorder. We all go through various levels of post-traumatic stress, and we all are trying to learn how to cope with it through the best ways we know possible. The fourth misconception, and it's a big one, is that if you're strong, you can handle the trauma all by yourself. Now, some people might disagree with this, but a lot of times we do need the help of others in order to get through our trauma. Trauma is not an easy thing that we can get through by ourselves, but it's something that we need help with. more times than not. There are exceptions to the rule, but often, if you have trauma, sometimes you're going to need some help. The last and fifth myth about trauma is that nothing good ever arises from a traumatic event, which we know is not the case, because a lot of times out of the dark comes the light. Out of the rain comes the sun. So going through a traumatic experience or a traumatic event hopefully can help to make a person smarter, wiser, and stronger for future events to come. And here are the 5 myths or misconceptions about love. The first misconception is that you can't make yourself fall out of love, which we know is not really true, because sometimes people do things and it forces you to not love them anymore. Or if we realize that loving someone who's toxic for us is not a good or beneficial thing to our development, we learn to start to sever those emotional ties to that person. Secondly, finding the right person is just a random draw the dice. Now, we often think that love is a random process, but little do we know that it's more scientific and calculated than we actually think. We attract what we are based on where we are in life, based on where we are with our mentalities, based on where we are with our emotional strength, and what's going on right here in the left side of our chest. These things help attract those who will help us on our journey, or those who will help us learn something on our journey. Either way, it's not as random as we think. Number 3, the third myth or misconception about love is that it's a black and white thing, that you're either in love or you're not in love. And the misconception about this really weighs, because a lot of times you're either up in love, going down in love, learning how to love. So there's a different amount of processes that goes on within the love process when you're dealing with someone. You have to learn how to love them. How do they like to be loved? Do they like to be touched? Do they like to be spoiled and showered with gifts? Do they like quality time? Do they like communications? Do they like acts of service? Everyone's love language is different. So learning how to love is not just a black or white thing. And even when you're falling out of love, it doesn't just happen like that with the snap of a finger. Number 4, falling in love is a unique state. Now, falling in love is very similar to falling out of love. It's just the opposite end of the spectrum. Or having enamorous feelings for others is not as unique as we'd like to think it is. Love is an emotion just like the wide array of emotions that we experience, and they are very similar more than they are different. The 5th and last conception about love is that to get it, you have to give an equal amount of love. Now, a lot of people believe in this, to give, to get 50-50. That is a myth. It's always been a myth, and it always will be a myth. The beauty about having a balanced relationship is knowing where your partner is lacking and where you can fill in. Knowing where you're lacking and where my partner can fill in. That does not always go like this. It doesn't always go hand in hand. It's not always 50-50, and it's not always an easy process. So we have to understand that sometimes we're going to have to be the person to give more love when our person is depressed, let down, weak, tired, under the influence, whatever it is. We have to be the person to carry that load. And we would hope that they would do the same for us in return. Doesn't always happen, but when it does, it feels good. And it's not always give the equal amount to receive the equal amount. Doesn't always work like that. So to be cognizant and understanding of these processes and these myths can help differentiate love from trauma. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Please hit the subscribe button below. Subscribe to the channel, Cinematics Media on Instagram, Cinematics Music on Instagram, and we'll see you again. Boop, 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 boop.